PC strategy games are a genre that I tend to be hot and cold on. I really do enjoy them, but I tend not to think about them unless I'm actually sitting at my computer at the time. The Steam Deck means that I can take my favorite PC strategy games on the go, and that means I'm much more likely to jump in for a quick turn or two when I'm thinking about it, other than waiting until I get home and I have to sit down and get everything set up. So let's talk about a few awesome PC strategy games that are fantastic on the Steam Deck, and one you should probably avoid. The mark of a good strategy game is making the player have to make lots and lots of choices. And Darkest Dungeon is one that is absolutely superb at that. In Darkest Dungeon, especially on the missions, you're going to have to make decisions where you have to decide which abilities to use, which enemies to attack, and you'll even have to decide whether or not you want to open up that chest. I mean, maybe it's a trap, but it could also be a fantastic reward. And all these choices that you have to make add up to a really, really fun game with lots of time for you to sit down and think, what should I do here? Back in town, you have even more micromanaging to do. Sure, you've finished all of the combat and you're back to the safety of town, but your characters have health to worry about, they have insanity to worry about, and if you do too many missions in a row with the same party, they're going to get worn out relatively quickly. Each member of your team has a specific way that they like to rest, and maybe they want to go to a brothel, or maybe they want to go to a church and pray, or they want to spend some time gambling at the local tavern. All of these things cost resources, and so you have to decide, where do I want to put my resources and which characters get to take advantage of those resources, or do I use those resources to recruit new characters instead? It's a lot of micromanaging, but it's also really, really fun. Darkest Dungeon is an absolutely fantastic mix of the roguelite genre, the strategy genre, and of course the horror genre. And if you have not played it, you've missed out on one of the best parts about it, and that is just the beautiful voice of the narrator as they tell you the enemies that you're up against. I don't know where they found this guy, but when he talks, you listen. Contrary to Darkest Dungeon, Wargroove is on the opposite side of the spectrum. It's definitely based on Advance Wars, but where Advance Wars is all about modern equipment, Wargroove is all about fantasy setting. You have, pikemen and swords and guys with swords and boards and people that can cast spells and archers, that kind of thing. Rather than the dark and grimy grit of Darkest Dungeon, Wargroove settles on a 16-bit art style that it has a wonderfully cheery, bright color palette and absolutely beautifully rendered sprites. If you haven't played this game, you're missing something very, very charming. Further comparisons to Darkest Dungeon, which is extremely hard. In fact, they tell you at the very beginning of the game that this is a game that you are destined to lose, essentially. Wargroove is accessible and approachable, and because it's so accessible and approachable, some people might think of it as too easy, but there's definitely a lot of choice that you have to make when playing the game. And it leaves you wondering if you made the right choice with every single move that you make. Did I do the right thing? Or perhaps I should have put that archer one step away. Or maybe I shouldn't have pushed my archers quite so far. Or maybe I should have went around the other direction. There's a lot of choices to make. And like I said, that's what makes a good strategy game good. So I'm here to tell you, Wargroove is fantastic. It's also multiplayer, and if you want to play up against some of your friends, I think you can play with up to 4 people through asynchronous multiplayer, which means I can take my turn, and then you can take your turn, and we don't have to be playing at the same time, which I think is awesome when they do things like that. Don't have any friends to play Wargroove with? Don't worry. There's a Discord link in the description down below. Make sure you click that. There's thousands of people waiting to talk to you and play video games with you. Join. You won't regret it. This next one I have gushed about a million times. It's Valkyria Chronicles. It's from Sega. It's an older game, but there's a whole series of them. I'm going to talk about the first one. Valkyria Chronicles is this weird mix of turn-based strategy with real-time combat, but it's not quite real-time combat, and I'll get to that in a second. It's got an awesome painterly watercolor look to it that just oozes charm. The game is beautiful, fantastic, and charming in every possible way, and I just absolutely love playing Valkyria Chronicles on my Steam Deck. Valkyria is this weird combination of turn-based strategy and real-time combat. The player gets their turn all at once, and the enemy, the AI, gets their turn all at once, and each turn is separated into these little icons that you can spend to move your characters. And then as you move your characters, you move them in real time. The enemy can't move at the same time, but they can shoot at you if you happen to cross their line of fire. So you have to look about and see where are the good places where cover are from the top-down view, plan your move out, and then try and execute it from an over-the-shoulder camera view. When you get to a place where you want to take shots and start shooting at the enemy, the Steam Deck is absolutely fantastic because it has gyro controls. You can line up your shots absolutely perfect and then press the A button in order to lock in that attack, fire off a few bullets, reload, and move on to the next character. It's an incredibly unique style of gameplay, and if you've never played a Valkyria Chronicles game before, I highly, highly recommend. In addition to combat, each of the characters that you have on your team has their own quirks and idiosyncrasies. They have their own likes and dislikes. They will really like one other character, but they'll despise another character, and you have to keep that in mind when you're having them work together on the battlefield. It's beneficial to you as the commander to make sure that characters who enjoy each other's company are close together because they will perform better on the battlefield. There's a lot of planning that goes into who am I going to take on my mission, and then when I'm on my mission, where do I put them on the battlefield in order to maximize my potential. It's really fun. When you're done with the battlefield, you go back to your main base and you have tons and tons of decisions to make there as well. You have different classes of characters like snipers and medics and scouts, and you get to decide, where do I want to put my experience points that I've earned? Do I want to level up the snipers or do I want to level up the medics? And then you also have your research points that you can spend to maybe give yourself better equipment, maybe better shielding on your tanks, or sniper rifles that can aim further and shoot better. There's tons of decisions to make, and then you have recruitment to do as well. Valkyria Chronicles is one of my favorite strategy games of all times, and it's for this reason. There's too many amazing choices that you have to decide between, and that makes it infinitely replayable, especially if you're not into the story aspect like me. Let's move on to the one I think you should avoid, on the Steam Deck anyway. Let's say leave at home. XCOM 2 is a fantastic strategy game. I absolutely loved playing it on my PC. I was really excited to play it on Steam Deck, but I ran into issues where I could not find the right control scheme. Let's talk about what the game is like first, and then we'll talk about the issues I've had playing it on the Steam Deck. So first off, you just heard me gushing about Valkyria Chronicles. It's very much like Valkyria Chronicles in the idea of the gameplay aspect, but instead of having an over-the-shoulder camera, you have a top-down view, and you don't move your character in real time. You do pick and choose where they go, but it feels very Valkyria Chronicles-like in that way. And then between the battles, you also do go back to a main base, and you have research and development to decide which classes do I want to upgrade, which equipment do I want to upgrade, and all of that stuff is really great, and it has a cool setting where it's you versus some weird aliens that have invaded the Earth. So I'm a huge fan of this game, but playing it on the Steam Deck is kind of miserable. It really surprises me how difficult it is to play this game on the Steam Deck, because everything that I read about XCOM 2 says that it does support controller, and sure enough, it does, but I can't get the Steam Deck controller, and maybe I'm doing something wrong. I can't get the Steam Deck controller to register as a regular controller. And that forces me to try and shoehorn into mouse and keyboard controls onto the Steam Deck. And look, I've told people many times that that's one of the benefits of the Steam Deck, is the fact that you have all of these options for using Steam input to your advantage. The issue arises when the character glyphs that come up on the screen tell you to push this button, and then you have to remember in real time, oh yeah, when I want to click this button, I have to push this on the Steam Deck. And it's really frustrating, especially knowing that the game runs with controller, but I can't get controller to work with the game. If you have a good solution for XCOM 2 on the Steam Deck, please let me know in the comments section down below, because this is a game I absolutely adore, but can't really enjoy it on the Steam Deck because I haven't worked out a good control scheme yet. So what are your favorite PC strategy games to play on the Steam Deck? Let me know in the comments down below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. Stay awesome, everybody, and I'll see you next time.